Police have ruled out foul play in Hulk Hogan's death
and transported Mr. Balea to Morton Plant Hospital, where he died at 11:17 a.m. There are no signs of foul play or suspicious activity related to this call for service at this time.
but his daughter just leaked documents suggesting a cover-up. Now it's looking like someone wanted him dead.
I had a target on my back the whole time.
And at the center of it all is a jaw-dropping $50 million lawsuit that could change everything we thought we knew. Let me break it down. The final bell. Wrestling fans across the globe were left reeling when the devastating news broke on July 24, 2025, that the legendary Hulk Hogan had passed away at the age. But as the wrestling world mourned the loss of their greatest icon, disturbing details began to emerge about the circumstances surrounding his final years. Details that paint a horrifying picture of medical negligence, corporate greed, and a healthcare system that may have failed wrestling's biggest star when he needed it most. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest at his home in Clearwater, Florida. But those close to the Hulkster knew that his death was the culmination of years of medical battles that had left his once powerful body broken and betrayed. The man who had once stood 6 feet 7 inches tall had been reduced to approximately 6 feet 4 inches due to the cumulative effects of surgeries and spinal compression. His golden tan had faded, his legendary 24-inch pythons had withered, and the superhuman strength that had made him wrestling's greatest champion had been systematically destroyed by a series of medical procedures that, according to explosive legal documents, should never have been performed.
How much pain are you in right now?
Everything hurts just like it's hard to explain. Like if I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm leaning on the counter brushing my teeth, I can't push away.
The pain in Hogan's voice during his final interviews was unmistakable. Here was a man who had endured decades of punishment in the squared circle, who had absorbed countless chair shots and taken bumps that would have hospitalized ordinary men, admitting that he was struggling to perform simple daily activities. This wasn't the invincible Hulkster that fans remembered. This was a broken warrior whose body had become a battlefield of surgical scars and failed medical interventions. Over the course of his final decade, Hogan underwent an astounding 25 surgeries, including 10 procedures specifically on his back.
Also pain management.
Yeah, that's a whole nother trip, brother, because I've had 25 surgeries in the last 10 years. So when people say, hey, the wrestling's fake, it goes right up my ass. Because at the end of the day, it's predetermined. If you and I are wrestling, they're going to tell us who's going to win or lose. But all that stuff that happens in the middle, it hurts.
These weren't routine maintenance procedures. They were desperate attempts to repair damage that, according to medical experts and legal documents that would later surface, had been catastrophically worsened by a series of botched surgeries performed by doctors who allegedly prioritized profit over patient care. The wrestling legend who had once seemed indestructible was being systematically destroyed, one surgery at a time, by the very medical professionals who had sworn to do no harm. The most damning evidence of this medical malpractice came to light in January 2013, when Hogan filed a devastating $50 million lawsuit against the Laser Spine Institute. The allegations contained within this lawsuit read like a horror story of medical negligence and corporate exploitation. According to the legal documents, between February 2009 and August 2010, Hogan underwent 6 unnecessary endoscopic procedures for conditions including scoliosis, spondylolisthesis, and spinal stenosis. But here's where the story takes a sinister turn. These procedures weren't just ineffective. They were allegedly performed despite doctors knowing they wouldn't work. The lawsuit reveals a shocking pattern of deception and manipulation that would make even the most dramatic wrestling storyline pale in comparison. The Institute allegedly used scare tactics to dissuade Hogan from undergoing a recommended traditional spinal surgery that could have preserved his career. Instead, they convinced him to opt for their less invasive treatments, promising quick recovery times and minimal downtime. What they didn't tell him was that these procedures would provide only temporary relief lasting mere weeks, while simultaneously destabilizing his already injured back and causing further catastrophic damage. The financial motivations behind this alleged malpractice are equally disturbing. The lawsuit claimed that founder James St. Louis had a substantial ownership interest in the facility that was not disclosed to Hogan, suggesting that financial incentives, rather than medical necessity, were driving treatment decisions. Hogan's insurance company was billed multiple 6-figure sums for these procedures, while the wrestling legend legend experienced only brief periods of relief that lasted 2 to 3 weeks at most. But perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of this medical betrayal was what it cost Hogan professionally and personally. The lawsuit alleged that these unnecessary procedures led to significant loss of past and future earnings, estimated at over $50 million. More importantly, they prevented him from having what could have been a career-defining final match. Hogan was scheduled to face John Cena at WrestleMania, a dream match that fans had clamored for years to see. Instead of going out on his back for the next generation in wrestling's biggest spectacle, Hogan was left writhing in agony, his career derailed by procedures that, according to the allegations, should never have been performed.
I would have loved to have had that last match, but now it's completely out of the picture. You know, I'm just too beat up from the surgeries and stuff. All of a sudden I'm on the phone with Vince. I was like, oh my God, oh my back. My back went out when I was talking to Vince on the phone. And I just had back surgery number 3 or 4 at that time. And I had to go right in immediately and get cut on.
The emotional weight of this lost opportunity cannot be overstated. Here was wrestling's greatest champion, reduced to canceling his potential retirement match not because of natural aging or legitimate injury, but because of what he alleged were unnecessary medical procedures that had left him unable to perform. The man who had headlined 8 of the first 9 WrestleManias was being denied his final bow by doctors who, according to the lawsuit, had prioritized their own financial gain over their patients' well-being. Hogan eventually underwent traditional fusion surgery in December 2010 and was able to return to limited work after 3 months, but the damage had been done. The window for his dream retirement match had closed, and his body had been irreparably compromised by the alleged malpractice he had endured. The Laser Spine Institute case was eventually settled out of court for a reportedly high 7-figure to low 8-figure amount, estimated at over $10 million, but no amount of money could give Hogan back his health or the career conclusion he deserved. The tragic irony is that Hulk Hogan, the man who had survived everything that professional wrestling could throw at him, may have ultimately been killed not by his chosen profession, but by the medical system that was supposed to heal him. The very doctors who should have been his salvation became, according to these explosive legal documents, the architects of his destruction. However, this goes much deeper than medical malpractice because Hulk Hogan might have brought this on himself. The body betrayed. The destruction of Hulk Hogan's legendary physique wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a systematic breakdown that unfolded over decades, accelerated by questionable medical decisions and exacerbated by the brutal toll of professional wrestling. To understand how the man once known as the immortal Hulk Hogan became a broken shell of his former self, we must examine the devastating cascade of injuries that transformed wrestling's ultimate superhero into a patient, trapped in a never-ending cycle of pain and procedures. The foundation of Hogan's physical destruction can be traced back to one seemingly simple wrestling move, the leg drop that had been his finishing maneuver for over 3 decades. What appeared to fans as a relatively safe way to end a match was, in reality, a devastating blow to Hogan's own body with every single execution. In a 2019 interview with the Los Angeles Times, Hogan stated, "All the back surgeries I've had are because of that expletive leg drop. Dropping that leg for 35 years did me in."
Is there anything in your career that you would go back and change?
I know the leg drop doesn't look like a tough move. So all those years dropping that leg in those rings, you know, with the board sticking up or landing on my tailbone, oh my God, what was that, a rock in the ring? Oh my God, was that a board sticking up? All those years dropping the leg, I would have changed that, and I would have never dropped the leg.
The mathematics of destruction are staggering when you consider the cumulative impact. Research suggests that Hogan performed this leg drop over 300 times per year during his peak wrestling years, meaning that over his 35-year career, he absorbed the equivalent of thousands of high-impact collisions directly to his tailbone and lower back. Each leg drop sent shockwaves through his spine, gradually grinding down vertebrae, herniating discs, and creating the spinal instability that would plague him for the rest of his life.
I don't know if you saw the TNA run. There were several times I was out in the ring with a back brace on, neck collar, back surgery 8 or 9 or whatever it was at the time. But yeah, it was. I wasn't really good to go after that. I'd been cut on so much and so often that they'd compromised the structure of my spine, you know.
But the leg drop was just the beginning of Hogan's physical destruction. The wrestling industry of the 1980s and 1990s was a different beast entirely from today's more safety-conscious approach. Hogan himself described the brutal conditions he faced, recalling matches with Andre the Giant, where the ring conditions were so dangerous that Andre would warn him, "Don't go down," because falling could result in paralysis. He specifically mentioned wrestling Andre at the Baltimore Civic Center, where they used a 22-foot boxing ring ring that was harder than concrete and had bumps and holes in it. The physical demands of Hogan's schedule during his peak years were nothing short of inhumane. He revealed that he was flying 300 days a year and wrestling 400 to 450 times a year.
We were talking earlier, when I was doing this full time, before this John Cena and The Rock and these guys came around, I was really flying 300 days a year.
300 days.
And I was wrestling 400 to 450 times a year.
To put this in perspective, this means Hogan was performing physically demanding matches more frequently than every single day of the year, often doing multiple shows in different cities on the same day. He described wrestling twice on Wednesdays, with a Saturday morning show at the Philadelphia Spectrum at 1 o'clock, then that same night at Madison Square Garden, followed by a Sunday afternoon show at the Boston Garden and a Sunday night show at the LA Forum. This relentless schedule, combined with the primitive safety standards of the era, created the perfect storm for catastrophic physical breakdown. Every match was another layer of damage to an already compromised skeletal system. Every landing was another microfracture in already weakened bones. Every impact was another step toward the medical nightmare that would define Hogan's later years. The surgical interventions that followed read like a medical horror story. According to Hogan's own accounts, he underwent 25 surgeries in the last decade of his life, including 10 back surgeries specifically targeting his spine, both knees completely replaced, both hips completely replaced, multiple shoulder surgeries with both shoulders requiring arthroscopic procedures, operations on his eyes, likely due to orbital socket fractures from facial impacts, and abdominal surgeries, the details of which remain unclear, but likely related to wrestling injuries. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about Hogan's medical journey came from fellow wrestling legend Kurt Angle, who dropped a bombshell about Hogan's condition following his 11th back surgery. In January 2023, Angle revealed on his podcast that Hogan had his back surgery again. He had the nerves cut from his lower body. He can't feel his lower body. He has to use his cane to walk around. This revelation sent shockwaves through the wrestling community, suggesting that Hogan had undergone a procedure so drastic that it had left him with no feeling below the waist. While Hogan's representatives quickly denied that he was paralyzed, stating he was doing well and is not paralyzed and could walk without a cane, the damage to his reputation and the concerns about his condition had already been done. The man who had once been the strongest wrestler in the world was now being discussed in terms of nerve damage and mobility aids. The physical transformation was equally heartbreaking. Hogan had lost approximately 3 inches in height, shrinking from his peak of 6'7" inches to around 6'4" inches due to spinal compression and the effects of multiple surgeries. In a 2005 interview, Hogan confirmed this devastating change, stating, "I used to be 6'7", but after knee, neck, and back surgeries, I'm now about 6'4". The symbolic weight of this physical diminishment cannot be overstated. Larger-than-life superhero was literally shrinking before the eyes of his fans. The pattern of medical negligence didn't end with the Laser Spine Institute debacle. As Hogan's health continued to deteriorate, he found himself trapped in what he described as a vicious cycle of prescription drug dependency. The pain from his botched surgeries was so severe that doctors began prescribing increasingly powerful painkillers, including the deadly drug that would nearly claim his life years before his actual death, fentanyl.
And the thing that stopped me, this thing that shut me down completely, where I said enough's enough, is when they hit me with the fentanyl stuff. They almost killed me with that stuff. So that's when I said, I'm done. You know, and I didn't even know they gave it to me, but morphine and Dilaudid and none of that stuff worked on my back. I'd had so many surgeries.
The fentanyl prescription represents another shocking example of medical malpractice that nearly killed Hogan years before his actual death. According to his own testimony, doctors prescribed fentanyl because he had developed a tolerance to morphine after his numerous surgeries. What they gave him was essentially a death sentence in pill form. The pharmacist reportedly told him that he'd never seen anybody on so much fentanyl and still be alive.
And the pharmacist says, I've never seen anybody on so much fentanyl and still be alive. And so that was the prescription they were giving me because my back was so bad. They cut on me so much and compromised the structural integrity of my back by cutting so much bone away that I was just a mess, you know. And so
this pharmaceutical nightmare reached its terrifying peak with the fentanyl prescription that nearly killed him. The dosage was so extreme that it included 150 milligram patches that went on his legs and 280 fentanyl pills that had to be stuffed under his gums in the morning and then at night. The total amount of fentanyl coursing through Hogan's system was so dangerous that even medical professionals were shocked he survived.
And in 2 weeks, I laid it all out, and I told my ex-wife at the time, I'm going upstairs, bring me about 15 gallons of water, I don't want to see anybody. And first thing I did was cut the patches in half and put them on my legs like an idiot. And I called my pain doctor and told him what I did. He goes, take that for your legs. That's how people overdose.
The effects of this overprescription were horrific. Hogan described violent physical reactions where his body would contort during sleep, with his head and shoulders facing opposite directions, requiring EMT intervention. He experienced severe hallucinations during withdrawal, including seeing his wife's teeth fall out and talk to him, and lost 35 pounds during his detoxification process. The final medical procedures that preceded Hogan's death paint an equally troubling picture. In May 2025, Hogan underwent what was described as a little fusion procedure on his neck, but reports soon emerged of serious complications, including trachea damage and his inability to speak. Former friend Bubba the Love Sponge's co-host claimed, "Hogan's not doing well. He can't speak. His trachea or whatever was damaged, and he's having problems, and it does not look good." Despite these alarming reports, Hogan's wife, Sky Daly, continued to deny the severity of his condition, stating in July 2025, "No, he's definitely not in a coma. His heart is strong, and there was never any lack of oxygen or brain damage." Just 2 days before his death, his close friend Jimmy Hart insisted that Hogan was doing phenomenal. But the reality was far different from these public denials. Hogan's death on July 24, 2025, occurred just weeks after these reassurances, suggesting that either his condition deteriorated rapidly or the true extent of his medical problems was being hidden from the public. The timing raises serious questions about the quality of medical care he was receiving and whether proper protocols were followed in his final treatment. And when his daughter finally spoke, the mystery was finally unraveled, and it's more shocking than you could ever imagine. The family speaks. In the aftermath of Hulk Hogan's death, as the wrestling world mourned and mainstream media celebrated his legacy, a different narrative began to emerge from those who knew him best, his family. While public tributes poured in from fellow wrestlers, celebrities, and politicians, Hogan's daughter Brooke and other family members had been notably absent from much of the public mourning, a silence that spoke volumes about the complicated relationships and hidden truths surrounding the wrestling legend's final years. The absence of family voices in the immediate aftermath of Hogan's death wasn't coincidental. It was the result of years of estrangement and family dysfunction that had been playing out in the public eye. In March 2025, just months before her father's death, Brooke Hogan had revealed that she was distancing herself from her family, including Hulk, citing years of abuse and family dysfunction. In a revealing Instagram post, Brooke stated that she had been extremely verbally and mentally abused since childhood, and that her no-contact decisions were for separate reasons affecting her new family, including her twins. This estrangement becomes even more significant when viewed through the lens of Hogan's medical journey and the circumstances surrounding his death. Sources close to the family suggest that Brooke's distance from her father wasn't just about personal family dynamics. It was also about her growing awareness of what she believed were serious medical malpractice issues that were being covered up or ignored by those around Hogan. The first hints of family concern about Hogan's medical care came to light during the Laser Spine Institute lawsuit. While the case was settled out of court for a reportedly substantial sum, estimated at over $10 million, family members had been pushing for a more aggressive legal approach that would have exposed the full extent of the alleged malpractice. According to sources familiar with the family dynamics, Brooke had been particularly vocal about her belief that her father was being taken advantage of by medical professionals who saw him as a lucrative patient rather than a human being in need of genuine care. The pattern of alleged exploitation continued throughout Hogan's final years, with family members reportedly expressing concerns about his heavy workload and the toll it was taking on his already compromised health. Jimmy Vanderlinden, who founded the professional wrestling publication Fightful, revealed that people close to Hulk Hogan had told me they weren't happy that his management team was running him into the ground, promoting his beer brand over the last year. This revelation suggests that those closest to Hogan, likely including family members, were concerned about his being overworked, despite his serious health challenges. The evidence of Hogan's grueling schedule in his final year is disturbing when viewed alongside his medical conditions. Despite having undergone 25 surgeries in the previous decade and suffering from multiple serious health issues, Hogan was actively promoting Real American Beer and launching Real American Freestyle Wrestling, RAF, serving as its commissioner. This included media appearances, event planning, and fan engagements, with reports indicating he was often on the road despite his physical limitations. The family's concerns about Hogan's exploitation weren't limited to his work schedule. Sources suggest that Brooke and other family members had become increasingly alarmed by what they saw as a pattern of of medical professionals taking advantage of their father's desperation to find relief from his chronic pain. The fentanyl prescription that nearly killed Hogan years earlier was seen by family members as a prime example of this exploitation. Doctors prescribing dangerous drugs not because they were medically necessary, but because they represented a lucrative treatment option for a high-profile patient with excellent insurance coverage. The cost of Hogan's fentanyl prescription alone, $2,000 every 2 days that wasn't covered by insurance, represented hundreds of thousands of dollars annually in out-of-pocket medical expenses. Family members reportedly questioned whether such expensive treatments were being recommended based on medical necessity or financial incentives. The steroid use that Hogan admitted to during his wrestling career adds another layer of complexity to the medical malpractice allegations. Hogan testified in 1994 that he had used steroids for approximately 13 to 14 years during his wrestling career, and scientific research has established clear links between long-term anabolic steroid use and cardiovascular problems, including reduced heart function and increased risk of heart attacks. His death from cardiac arrest at age 71 raises questions about whether his medical team properly considered his steroid history when prescribing treatments and evaluating surgical risks. Family members reportedly believe that Hogan's steroid history should have been a major factor in any medical decision-making, particularly regarding cardiovascular risks associated with major surgeries and powerful pain medications. The combination of long-term steroid use, multiple major surgeries, and powerful prescription drugs like fentanyl created a perfect storm of cardiovascular risk that may not have been properly managed by his medical team. Sources close to the family indicate that Brooke and other family members are now working with legal experts to review Hogan's medical records and determine whether there are grounds for additional malpractice claims related to his final treatments. The precedent set by the successful Laser Spine Institute lawsuit provides a roadmap for potential legal action, particularly if evidence emerges that unnecessary procedures were performed or that proper medical protocols were not followed. As this investigation continues to unfold, the questions surrounding Hulk Hogan's death become more complex and disturbing. Was wrestling's greatest champion killed not by the accumulated damage from his chosen profession, but by a medical system that failed him when he needed it most? Did doctors prioritize profit over patient care, performing unnecessary procedures and prescribing dangerous drugs to a desperate man seeking relief from chronic pain? And perhaps most importantly, could his death have been prevented if he had received proper, ethical medical care focused on healing rather than profit? The answers to these questions may ultimately come from the very family members who distanced themselves from Hogan in his final years, the daughter and other relatives who witnessed firsthand what they believed was the systematic destruction of wrestling's greatest champion by the medical establishment that was supposed to save him. As Brooke Hogan and other family members continue to speak out about the circumstances surrounding their father's death, the truth about what really killed the Hulkster may finally come to light. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.